This is the story of the largest cash seizure in the history of the war on drugs, a case so shocking that not a single gram of drugs was ever found. It's about a Chinese-Mexican businessman who went from being celebrated by world leaders to ending up in prison across multiple countries.
La fortuna era de $205 millones. Fue descubierta en marzo de 2007 por agentes de la Procuraduría General de la República. 2 noches y días enteros se pasaron estos funcionarios contando el dinero.
It's a tale of hidden deals, billions in dirty money, and how Las Vegas casinos helped cartels. This is the story of Zhenli Ye Gon. Zhenli Ye Gon was born in 1963 in Shanghai, China, into a life of poverty. At the age of 27, he made a life-changing decision to leave everything behind and move to Mexico in the 1990s, seeking for a fresh start. Fast forward 10 years, and Zhenli had transformed himself into the biggest supplier of drug-making materials in Latin America, reportedly earning a staggering $14 million a day and living a billionaire lifestyle. Zhenli became a key figure in the infamous Cartel de Cali, the largest drug trafficking organization in the world at the time, earning the ominous nickname, Leader of the Western Hemisphere. His influence reached the highest levels of society as he was rumored to be a close friend of Mexico's president, while also enjoying VIP treatment at Las Vegas casinos where he gambled millions. The question remains, how did this once poor man from Shanghai rise to such power and wealth, becoming one of the most notorious figures in the global drug trade? Zhenli Ye Gon moved to Mexico to work as a representative for Chinese pharmaceutical companies, focusing on distributing chemicals and raw materials used in the production of legal medications. However, his initial ventures were far from successful. He first tried trading cold pharmaceuticals from China, but the business struggled. Determined to find his footing, he met his wife, Yui, and with her help pivoted to selling clothes, but unfortunately for him, this venture also failed to bring in any substantial income. During a particularly bleak phase in his life, when his business was failing, debts were piling up, and the future seemed desperately uncertain, Zhenli's wife gave birth to their baby. The responsibility of providing for a newborn sent him into a spiral of anxiety and determination. He found himself reevaluating every avenue for financial survival, desperate to find a way to secure a better life for his growing family. It was in these frantic moments that he made a startling realization. Many of the very chemicals he had been selling for legitimate pharmaceutical purposes could also be used in the production of crystal meth, an illicit drug that was in high demand. Overwhelmed by financial strain, yet driven by the desire to provide for his wife and newborn, he decided to pivot his business. This fateful decision became the turning point in his life, setting him on a new and precarious path. With this new focus, Zhenli quickly found success, eventually founding several companies, most notably the highly successful chemical importer Unimed Pharmchem, Mexico. He began living a better life but chose not to aim any higher, fully aware of the risks involved. His rise in prominence was cemented in 2002 when President Vicente Fox personally presented him with Mexican citizenship papers, officially making him a Mexican citizen. This recognition further solidified his position as a respected figure, at least on the surface. The good and beautiful story didn't last long. Out of nowhere, Zhenli received a call that would change everything. A customer wanted to meet him. The signature on the message, Guzman. Yes, El Chapo Guzman, Mexico's most notorious drug lord. At the time, Guzman was in his 30s and had two big ambitions. First, he wanted to take control of the Cartel de Cali, Mexico's most powerful drug organization, where he was currently only third in command. Second, he dreamed of transforming the cartel into the world's #1 drug empire. But there was a problem. Mexico's geographical location wasn't ideal for growing coca plants, so Guzman couldn't produce cocaine. The only crop Mexico could grow in large quantities was marijuana, but in the drug world, marijuana was considered child's play compared to harder drugs. To realize his big dream, Guzman turned his attention to something the Colombians hadn't embraced: methamphetamine. Meth was relatively cheap to produce, had a skyrocketing demand, and could yield massive profits. There was only one problem. Guzman didn't know how to make it. He kept failing in his early attempts to produce the drug. That's when Guzman heard about Zhenli Ye Gon, a reliable supplier of high-quality chemical precursors essential for making drugs. Zhenli already had a solid reputation in Mexico's business community, even though he hadn't yet hit it big in the drug world. Intrigued, Guzman reached out to arrange a meeting. One fateful night, the two men finally met. Zhenli, ever the businessman, laid out his terms. "I only supply quality products and I don't get involved in anything else." Guzman, with a smirk, replied, "Funny, that's exactly what I need." The two quickly struck a deal. From that first meeting, everything changed. Within just 5 years, Guzman had risen to the top of the global drug trade, becoming the world's most powerful drug lord and realizing his ambitions. Meanwhile, Zhenli Ye Gon became the brilliant supplier behind the scenes, providing the chemical ingredients that fueled Guzman's meteoric rise and reshaped the global narcotics market. On March 15, 2007, during a raid by Mexican authorities, a staggering sum of cash was discovered hidden in Zhenli Ye Gon's luxurious mansion in Lomas de Chapultepec, Mexico City. The money was mostly in $100 bills, with piles of cash lining corridors, stuffed into wardrobes, and strewn throughout the entire house. The initial seizure included $205 million, 200,000 euros, 17,300,000 Mexican pesos, and 180,000 Hong Kong dollars. However, when reporters posted video footage of the scene, it appeared to show far more cash than initially reported, prompting speculation that the actual figure could have exceeded $1.5 billion. In total, the cash weighed over 2 tons and reportedly took agents 2 full days just to carry out of the house. But the discoveries didn't stop there. Along with the enormous amount of cash, authorities also found a small arsenal of automatic weapons and 7 luxury cars. The DEA hailed the raid as a major triumph, calling it the largest single drug cash seizure the world had ever seen, and describing it as the ultimate jackpot for law enforcement. But what actually happened? Why was a random expat businessman in Mexico City now the ultimate jackpot for the DEA? Through his company, Unimed Pharmchem, Zhenli Ye Gon had been importing large quantities of ephedrine and pseudoephedrine from laboratories in China. These chemicals, commonly used in the production of over-the-counter medications like Sudafed, are also critical precursors for manufacturing crystal meth. Authorities suspected that Zhenli's operations were not entirely legitimate. The theory was that he was acting as a key supplier for the Sinaloa cartel, smuggling these chemicals into Mexico under the guise of legal pharmaceutical imports. Once in the country, it was believed that the chemicals were funneled to organized crime groups, enabling large-scale methamphetamine production. This link placed Zhenli Ye Gon at the center of a complex web of international drug trafficking, raising questions about the true purpose of his seemingly successful business empire. But at the time his house was raided, Zhenli Ye Gon wasn't even there. He was in Las Vegas. A passionate fan of high-stakes poker, Zhenli was a particularly valuable patron of the Sands Hotel and Casino. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, by 2007, he had become the casino's single largest all-cash upfront gambler. Zhenli himself claimed to have lost a staggering $157 million there. His business was so appreciated that the Sands reportedly went out of their way to accommodate him, even providing complimentary Rolls-Royce rides. However, not everyone saw Zhenli's gambling as a harmless indulgence. Many believed his extravagant casino visits were part of a sophisticated and, surprisingly, common money laundering scheme. According to this theory, Zhenli's high-stakes betting wasn't about winning or losing, but about cleaning dirty cash. By cycling illicit money through the casino and converting it into legitimate gambling proceeds, Zhenli could effectively help organized crime groups disguise their illegal profits. Under U.S. law, casinos are required to report suspicious activity to authorities. However, not only did the Sands Casino fail to report Zhenli Ye Gon's activities, they actively courted him. Beyond providing him with luxurious perks like Rolls-Royce rides, they allegedly allowed Zhenli to purchase casino chips through anonymous money transfers from accounts in Mexico and Hong Kong. Furthermore, he was reportedly granted access to separate bank accounts typically used by the hotel to pay pilots, effectively helping him obscure the origins of the money flowing into the casino. After the DEA launched an investigation following the raid on Zhenli's mansion, the Sands Casino ultimately agreed to return $47 million to the U.S. Treasury as part of a settlement. The case shed light on the casino's complicity in facilitating money laundering activities under the guise of high-stakes gambling. Zhenli Ye Gon himself was finally arrested by a team of DEA agents while eating at a small restaurant in Maryland in July 2007. Once again, the DEA hailed this as a major success, declaring, "With the arrest of Zhenli Ye Gon, we've apprehended not only the man behind the money, but the man behind the math." However, for all the fanfare, the case soon began to fall apart. Key witnesses recanted their testimony. The Chinese government refused to provide critical documentation, and most damning of all, for someone accused of being a kingpin of the meth trade, not a single gram of methamphetamine was ever found. So the pressing question remained: what exactly did they find? Investigators discovered precursor chemicals in the warehouses of Unimed Pharmchem, Zhenli's company. While these substances could be used to manufacture methamphetamine, they were also part of Unimed's legitimate business of supplying pharmaceutical raw materials. Further complicating matters, there were significant issues with how Mexican investigators handled the chemical samples, raising questions about the evidence's integrity. In August 2009, a federal judge in the United States dismissed the case against Zhenli Ye Gon, citing insufficient evidence. Despite this victory, Zhenli remained in jail, fighting extradition to Mexico, where he was still wanted to face charges. This is where things get truly interesting. Despite beating the American charges, Zhenli Ye Gon still faced the daunting challenge of explaining why he had $205 million worth of $100 bills stashed in his home. When pressed, Zhenli admitted that the money had ties to cartels but made an explosive claim. He had been ordered to hide the cash by Javier Lozano Alarcón, then Secretary of Labor, who allegedly said the money was intended for President Felipe Calderón's election campaign. He claimed that the alleged order to hide the money came with a death threat.
Tenía dos maletas. Yo abrí uno, es lleno de dinero, a 100 billetes. Y luego él dice, ¿copela o cuellos?
Further asserting that his life would be in danger if he cooperated. Zhenli argued that this threat demonstrated he would never receive a fair trial in Mexico and used it as a central point in his fight against extradition. This claim not only added to the drama but also highlighted the broader concerns about corruption and the blurred lines between politics and organized crime in Mexico. Zhenli's defense became a high-stakes battle, not just to clear his name, but to avoid returning to a country where he claimed his life was at risk. Zhenli's claims might sound ludicrous, but the level of corruption in Mexican politics made them plausible enough that many people in Mexico actually believed him. A poll conducted by the newspaper Diario Reforma revealed that a majority of respondents either believed Zhenli's story or, at the very least, didn't doubt that the government was involved in some way. This public sentiment reflected the deep mistrust in Mexico's political system, where scandals linking officials to organized crime were far from uncommon. For many, Zhenli's allegations were less a conspiracy theory and more a reflection of the grim reality of political corruption. Zhenli Ye Gon fought extradition to Mexico for 9 years, but in 2016, U.S. courts ruled against him. He was finally sent back to Mexico to face trial, bringing a new chapter to the long and controversial case. Even now, 5 years later, Zhenli Ye Gon has still not had his day in court. While some of his business associates, including his wife, have been found guilty, he remains in custody on remand, awaiting trial on charges of money laundering and weapons possession. In 2019, the Mexican government auctioned off his infamous mansion for 102 million pesos, over 5 million USD. To this day, no methamphetamine has been recovered or conclusively linked to Zhenli Ye Gon's operations. His story is a complex tale of globalization, a Chinese businessman who became a Mexican citizen, allegedly collaborated with cartels to flood the U.S. with drugs, laundered money through Las Vegas casinos, and accused Mexican politicians of high-level corruption. It remains one of the most intriguing and controversial cases in the history of the war on drugs. He's certainly not the first, nor is he the most violent, to have amassed millions from the illicit drug trade, and there's little doubt he won't be the last. The relentless demand for narcotics ensures that new profiteers will always emerge, perpetuating the cycle of crime and violence.